Hey class, I'm Mr. Thornton. You've got 28 days until May, and I'm going to help you succeed in your GCSEs. This lesson, making revision notes. Every year I've started doing a lesson with my Year 11s where I show them how I would make notes. I get them to choose a topic which they think I won't know anything about from Wikipedia, and then I make notes on the board exactly as I would on a piece of paper, and then I rub them off, and at the end of the lesson we go back to the same page from Wikipedia and I see how much I can remember. Usually I get between 50 and maybe 70%, so not completely perfect, but effective note making allows me to retain quite a lot of information from an article which I previously knew nothing about. And that's pretty good when I'm learning 70% of the first paragraph all about SpongeBob SquarePants. It's really effective if you know what you're doing, but I've found time and time again that my students didn't know what they're doing because everyone just assumes that they know how to make notes. So that's what we're going to focus on in this lesson, and the skills which we learned today are going to come back up when we're looking at some of the other revision techniques which I'm going to cover in later lessons. The text which I'm going to be using to make notes from is going to be a chapter from my own revision guide, which you can download for Kindle devices or for the Kindle app, which you can get on pretty much every operating system. I'm going to show you, if this was something which I was completely new to, how I would go about summarising that information. Firstly, you can use lined paper or plain paper, and you can use it in portrait or landscape. It doesn't make a difference really, it's up to you, whichever you feel most comfortable with. You can see this chapter's all about hydrocarbons, so that's going to be the first thing which I'm going to do. And rather than put it as a title, I'm going to put this in the middle of the page here. So this is what I'm looking at, this is what I'm going to be learning about. Now as I go through, there are various different bits in the text which are in bold. I'm looking out for key words. And what do those key words mean? Those are going to be your key concepts. Those are going to be the bits which you really need to know about. So as I go through, the first thing that we can see there is that we've got the word alkane in bold. So this is going to be a really important group of hydrocarbons. There are others, but let's focus on those for a start. So, alkanes. I do hope you can read my handwriting. It's not exactly one of my strengths, I'm afraid. But the alkanes, they all end in ane, A-N-E. So we've got a load of different ones, and the names, they also relate to how many carbon atoms are in that type of alkane. And there are 4 of them which you need to know about. So we've got methane, ethane, propane and butane. So methane has 1 carbon in its chain, and then ethane has 2 carbons in the chain. Propane has 3 and butane has 4. So this is the number of carbons. What I'm going to do, I know that the chains are all pretty similar, so what I'm going to do is just draw one of these as an example. And the one which I'm going to draw is ethane. So e.g. ethane. It's got those 2 carbons there, and it's got 6 hydrogens coming off the side. Now then what we get on to is how the formula relates to the number of carbons. Okay, so we've got a really common formula here. We've got CN, which means some number of carbons, and then H2N plus 2. What I'm going to do is give myself a little example. So if the number of carbons C equals, let's say 3, then H, the number of hydrogens, equals 2 times 3 plus 2 equals 8. So this is propane, is going to be C3H8. This formula I need to know what that means. I don't need to remember the formula off the top of my head. I just need to know, what does this mean? So I'm going to put a little note here. I need to know the meaning of the formula. Okay, I'm not going to need to be able to recall that formula off the top of my head. I just need to know what it means. So, that whole section to do with alkanes, I've got that I need to know meth is 1, eth is 2, prop is 3 and bute is 4. I've got a little diagram to show me the sort of arrangement that they have, but I'm pretty sure I can remember that we've got those carbon atoms in the chain. It's this sequence which I'm going to need to learn. I also need to know how to use that formula. I don't need to learn it off the top of my head though. So next, we need to know a little bit about crude oil. So these hydrocarbons are coming from crude oil. I can remember that crude oil is the stuff that's coming out of the ground. So don't write down things which you can remember. Write down the key bits which you can't remember, which you need to learn. Let's see, so crude oil contains a number of different compounds, each of which have different properties. We might want a less viscous hydrocarbon. So let's talk about viscous equals, the word I've used is gloopy. And those have high melting, oops, can't spell melting. So it's got a high melting and boiling point if something's viscous. So we've got lots of different fractions with different viscosities. So different fractions with different viscosities. Now, you'll see that I'm all over the page here. That doesn't make a difference. It's less important that you're laying things out in a nice, neat, ordered structure, and more important that you lay them out in the way which makes sense to you. What you're doing here is reflecting the way your brain is sorting this information. So it may seem a little bit haphazard, but this is the way our brains process information. By doing this, you strengthen those connections in your memory to help your brain recall these things a lot better. So don't work against the way your brain wants to work. Work with your own brain. So as we scroll down, let's see. Lots of different fractions, and we can distill them in a fractionating column. So we separate them. The word is distill in a fractionating column. Okay, and that is this thing that looks like this. I'm going to do a quick, very rough sketch so I can remember what that thing is. Down here, so that's the crude oil in, oil, let's do a little flame there, so I know it's hot, and then it gets cold up here. Okay, so that entire chapter there, I've summarised all the key bits that I need to know here. I've got the idea that we've got the stuff which comes off at a high temperature down at the bottom here. Oh, there's one little bit which I could add here. So these are long chains, and these ones are short chains. I've got our description of what those different fractions are and what alkanes are, and I've got how to name the different alkanes, what an alkane looks like, and the formula for them. So that's the entire chapter out of this revision guide, and it's the key points there which I pick out. Now don't just do exactly the same thing as me. Do what makes most sense to you. Pick out the key bits which make most sense to you. But what you're looking for here is, what are these important key points? You're not just going to need to quote the whole thing from memory. All you need to know is, what are those key concepts within it? So that's all there is to note taking. And by the way, it's really weird trying to do note taking and explain what you're doing at the same time. So I hope you've been able to follow with what I was doing there. So there's my notes. As you can see, this was pretty quick and simple to do. Having the information written down isn't the important part of making notes though. It's useful, it allows you to refer back to things and get to the bits you need quickly, but it's not the crucial thing about it. The crucial thing is that your brain has had to do some work. You've had to read through that information and think about it. Pick out what the most important bits are. Think about how they're related to each other. By getting your brain to do all that work, rather than just passively hoping that you're going to absorb the information, there's a much better chance that you're going to be able to recall it. Now again, as I said, when I've done this with my classes, I don't recall 100% of it. Never managed to get 100% of anything. But remember the grade boundaries. The grade boundary for an A star is usually around 80 to maybe 90%. So even those very top students can be missing 1 question out of 10, 1 mark out of 10, and still get those top grades. No one is expecting 100%. In later lessons, I'll be looking at even more effective techniques based on this, which will let you take your learning to the next level. I hope that video really helped you. It really helps my channel when you like, subscribe, and share. Let the world know that you're going to succeed in your GCSEs. There are loads more GCSE Science videos on my channel too. Here's another one which YouTube thinks you'll find useful. You can click on my picture here to subscribe, click down there to check how well you understood with the Snap Quiz website and app, and click just here to get my revision guides. All the links and info are in the description, and please leave a comment to let me know what you think. Good luck in your GCSEs, and thanks very much for watching.